Carl Jung once wrote, "The greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown." This observation challenges our usual approach to the demands and dilemmas of midlife. Too often, we've been taught that once we reach our 40s or 50s, we enter a period of inevitable decline, a so-called midlife crisis, fraught with diminishing energy and shrinking possibilities. But what if this common belief is incomplete? What if midlife actually presents us with an opening to harness a new kind of vitality, a chance to redistribute our physical, mental, and emotional resources in a way we've never done before? Instead of viewing the midpoint of life as a slow descent, we might begin to see it as a threshold that invites us into deeper self-understanding and transformation. Think about it. There's a moment in every person's life when they sense that the strategies and energy patterns of the past no longer feel sustainable. Our priorities shift, our bodies behave differently, our dreams, once urgent, may start to fade, or they might mutate into something more profound. But is that a crisis or an awakening? Rather than resisting these changes, Jung suggests that by engaging them, by outgrowing our earlier frameworks, we might discover something extraordinary about ourselves. Could it be that the second half of life holds the key to deeper fulfillment, not in spite of our past, but precisely because of everything we've already experienced? If we dare to question our assumptions, how might we channel that question into a journey of profound personal development? Let's explore how midlife can be a gateway to a new balance of energy, one that integrates all our previous life phases while guiding us toward a more meaningful future. It helps to begin by considering how we enter adulthood. In our early years, our teens, 20s, and 30s, society often pushes us to build foundations in material, social, and professional realms. We race to collect achievements, degrees, titles, or accolades, frequently fueling ourselves with a level of boundless energy that seems unique to youth. The push for external success can be so intense that there's little space to question whether we're truly aligned with our deeper selves. We wear the bright persona of the ambitious student, the driven professional, the devoted parent, or the tireless adventurer. We focus on forward motion, trusting that more effort, more time, and more energy will automatically yield the life we desire. Then, at some point in our 40s, or perhaps a bit earlier or later for some, it becomes evident that the sheer force of willpower doesn't work quite as it did before. We start to notice the body's subtle messages. Fatigue arrives more quickly, rest becomes more precious, and certain emotional triggers feel sharper than they once did. The society around us often labels this stage midlife crisis, as if we're doomed to collapse under the weight of unmet expectations. The narrative goes something like this: we've peaked, and the future is just a winding down. We assume that our best years lie behind us, that we must cling to the illusions of youth or risk drifting into irrelevance. Jung, however, offered a radically different perspective. Rather than labeling midlife as a decline, he saw it as an important threshold in the individuation process, a psychological shift from external to internal focus, from image and ambition to authenticity and self-awareness. According to Jung, the first half of life is necessary for establishing who we are in the world, forging our personas, and collecting experiences. But this second half of life, this so-called midlife, beckons us to integrate the unseen parts of ourselves, particularly those that have been neglected or repressed. In this light, the challenge is that our energies are inevitably weakening. It's that our energies need to be reallocated. What might be lost in raw youthful power can be gained in greater emotional stability, wisdom, and authenticity. Far from being just a crisis, midlife can be the beginning of a more balanced, conscious, and ultimately more fulfilling chapter. To understand this process better, we can compare life stages. In our youth, the emphasis is often on expansion. Test your limits, try new things, discover your talents, and accumulate experiences. It's an outward journey where everything and everyone is a potential teacher, challenge, or stepping stone. This is a crucial time because we develop the building blocks of self-esteem, social ties, and professional identity. But what happens when you reach a certain threshold and realize you can't sustain this pace forever? That there has to be a shift from endless expansion to intentional depth. It's like tending a garden. In the spring and early summer, the focus is on fast growth, vibrant blossoms, and outward display. But as the season shifts, the gardener begins to prune, to consider which plants should remain, how to water efficiently, and how to encourage root depth rather than wild expansion. This analogy of the garden offers a powerful metaphor for managing midlife energy. In spring, it's natural to scatter seeds broadly and see what grows. In the mid-season, however, you're called to weed out what no longer serves, nourish what has promise, and ensure that the plants with deeper roots receive the care they need. Similarly, midlife invites us to look honestly at how we've been channeling our vitality. Are we pouring ourselves into superficial roles or outdated ambitions? Are we spending our mental energy reliving regrets or chasing illusions that no longer align with our mature values? The goal is not to condemn the past, but to harness the wisdom gleaned from it so that we can direct our energies in more enriching ways. Jung introduced the concept of individuation, which at its heart is about integrating the conscious and unconscious realms of the psyche. Early in life, we build a persona, the social mask that allows us to navigate the outer world. We also end up with a shadow, which contains aspects of ourselves we'd rather not see or acknowledge. Maybe we've discarded certain talents because they didn't fit our career path, or we've suppressed emotional vulnerabilities because they didn't align with the strong, successful image we wanted to project. Midlife is precisely when these forgot or neglected aspects begin knocking at the door of consciousness. They demand to be integrated, not as problems to be fixed, but as reservoirs of energy and insight that can enrich our lives. This shift can feel unsettling, a kind of turmoil or restlessness that many label as a crisis. But from Jung's perspective, it's the psyche's way of calling us toward wholeness. Modern psychological research aligns with this idea. Studies have shown that while happiness can dip in midlife, a phenomenon sometimes depicted as the U-curve of life satisfaction, people often rebound with a more stable and contented outlook in their later years. Neuroscientific research also points toward ongoing brain plasticity. Contrary to the old assumption that our brains stop adapting past young adulthood, we now know that new neural pathways can form well into our later decades. The key is to remain engaged in meaningful tasks and to be open to learning and growth. By managing the stressors of midlife, whether professional, familial, or existential, we can lay the groundwork for a more sustained and profound sense of well-being. These scientific findings echo Jung's stance. You have the capacity to reshape, reorganize, and repurpose your inner life, even after the so-called prime of youth has faded. Real-life manifestations of this transformation abound, although they often go unnoticed. Take, for instance, the corporate executive who, after years of climbing the ladder, experiences a sense of emptiness despite outward success. Perhaps she decides to shift her focus toward a social initiative that resonates with deeper values. Or the stay-at-home parent who, upon the children leaving home, finds an unexpected reservoir of passion for painting or music, bringing a new sense of purpose. These stories aren't just about chasing a new hobby. They illustrate the process of rebalancing one's energies, turning inward to find what truly sustains us at this stage in life. Through these examples, we see that midlife isn't a uniform crisis, but a diverse set of opportunities to reclaim our authenticity. Yet this path of transformation is not without its tensions. Inner conflicts often bubble up. Am I abandoning my former self if I change directions? Is it selfish to focus on my growth when I have so many responsibilities? These questions point directly to the moral and existential weight of midlife. Jung believed that these very conflicts are necessary. Rather than passively endure them, we're meant to engage them actively. It's in the wrestling with these questions that we find clarity about our deeper motivations and reconcile parts of ourselves that have been at odds. In other words, the friction we feel in midlife is not merely a sign of impending doom. It's a sign that our psyche is ready to evolve. In addressing the psychological depth of midlife, we have to confront the shadow. The shadow may contain repressed fears, unacknowledged desires, or traits we see as socially unacceptable. In the first half of life, we often try to hide these traits even from ourselves, fearing they may disrupt our carefully constructed persona. But as midlife approaches, these hidden elements may appear in dreams, unexpected emotional outbursts, or lingering dissatisfaction. We might even project our own shadow onto others, blaming them for qualities we refuse to see in ourselves. The paradox is that within the shadow lies a wellspring of potential. By acknowledging and integrating these disowned parts, we can regain lost energy. Many people find that once they permit themselves to explore an abandoned interest or accept a painful truth, they tap into a level of creativity and vitality they never suspected they had. Closely tied to the shadow is the persona, the social face we wear to fit into certain roles, be it the supportive friend, competent manager, or perfect parent. In midlife, these roles might start to feel stale. We might look in the mirror and wonder why we're wearing an outfit that once symbolized success but now feels alien. We may realize that we've been performing, sometimes unconsciously, to meet expectations rather than expressing our genuine thoughts and values. This is where midlife offers a chance to refine, or even remake the persona to be more congruent with our evolving inner reality. Think of it as a piece of clothing you outgrow. You can either keep forcing yourself into it, feeling uncomfortable and constrained, or you can find something that truly fits who you are today. Deeper still, the unconscious elements of our psyche, those archaic images, instincts, and inherited potentials, begin to stir. Jung called these the archetypes, universal symbols and themes that shape our internal world. In youth, we may be drawn mostly to the hero archetype, pushing ourselves to conquer the external world. But in midlife, other archetypes, such as the sage or the caregiver, might start to resonate more. This shift can nudge us toward mentoring younger colleagues or using our expertise in ways that nurture the next generation. Instead of fixating on personal ambition, the drive can become more transpersonal, directed toward collective well-being and spiritual insight. Thus, energy management in midlife isn't just about how to preserve what little fuel we think we have left. It's about rediscovering a deeper reservoir of meaning that energizes us in ways we never before considered. Integration is the key word here. We're trying to bring together these layers, the known and the unknown, the youthful persona and the emerging one, the shadow and the conscious ego. By navigating this tapestry with awareness, we achieve what Jung termed individuation, a coming into wholeness that not only benefits our personal life, but also radiates outward to our families, communities, and society. As we integrate these parts of ourselves, we often experience a new sense of vitality. It's not the frenetic energy of early adulthood, but something more measured and enduring, a steady flame rather than a firework. Contemporary psychologists have studied this transition in various ways. For instance, Daniel Levinson's work on life stages underscores how predictable some midlife shifts can be. He notes that the midlife transition involves questioning earlier choices and reevaluating life structures. While it can evoke anxiety, it also provides a framework for growth. Others, like Harvard psychologist Susan David, explore how emotional agility, remaining flexible and honest with one's feelings, enables us to navigate life's turning points more effectively. These perspectives support Jung's vision by showing that these transformations are not just fanciful or purely theoretical. They unfold in concrete ways that researchers can observe and measure. Recent scientific studies on brain health lend further credence to the idea that midlife can be a time of renewal. Neuroscientists have discovered that emotional regulation, empathy, and decision-making can actually improve with age, in part because the brain develops more complex neural networks for integrating experience and processing social information. While certain cognitive functions, such as the speed of processing novel information, may slow down, the ability to draw on accumulated wisdom can increase. This corresponds with the idea that while raw energy may wane, a more refined, strategic use of energy can emerge, allowing us to direct our focus more effectively toward what truly matters. In practical terms, modern applications of these findings abound. Many people are turning to mindfulness-based practices, yoga, meditation, breathwork, to maintain psychological and physical health as they move through midlife. Research on mindfulness shows it can help reduce stress and improve cognitive function, both of which are critical as we renegotiate our life path. More and more midlife professionals are seeking coaches or therapists trained in depth psychology, finding that a Jungian approach to dreams, symbols, and personal myths helps them reconnect with neglected parts of themselves. Company wellness programs increasingly include workshops on resilience and mental fitness, reflecting an understanding that employees in their 40s and 50s benefit from guidance on balancing work demands with emotional well-being. These real-world applications of Jung's insights demonstrate their ongoing relevance in our increasingly complex world. Another area of modern study focuses on post-traumatic growth, a process by which adversity catalyzes personal development. For instance, individuals who experience burnout or severe challenges in midlife careers sometimes report that, despite the painful crisis, they eventually emerge with a renewed sense of clarity and purpose. This research resonates powerfully with Jung's belief in the transformative potential hidden within life's struggles. Even in moments of despair or feeling stuck, the psyche may be using the crisis to shed old structures and emerge stronger and more self-aware. Of course, all these perspectives point to a shared message. Midlife doesn't have to be the slow decline that society has taught us to expect. Instead, it can be the stage at which we learn to balance our energies with wisdom and intention. The key is awareness, being willing to peel back our personas, make peace with our shadows, and channel the lessons of our past into purposeful action moving forward. It's not a passive process. It requires active engagement, whether through reflective practices like journaling and therapy, or creative pursuits that allow the imagination to flourish, or simply setting healthy boundaries in relationships that drain us. Returning to Jung's observation about problems being outgrown rather than solved, we see now that the puzzle of midlife isn't a neat equation we can fix with a single solution. It's more like an ongoing dance between our evolving needs and the deeper currents of our psyche. We grow out of certain illusions, discover new aims that align with our mature selves, and refine how we expend our energies, whether emotional, intellectual, or physical. As we do so, the sense of crisis can shift into a sense of initiation, a stirring of potential that, if nurtured, will become a source of lifelong vitality. So, is midlife truly a crisis, or is it an invitation? By shifting our perspective, we can find hope in the reality that deep challenges often precede profound transformations. Jung recognized that the psyche is an ever-evolving entity, capable of incredible adaptation. Even as society bombards us with negative stereotypes about aging, we can remind ourselves that every life stage has its strengths. Youth is for building, testing, and expanding. Midlife is for reconfiguring, integrating, and refining. This reconfiguration, when approached with introspection and courage, offers the possibility of emerging more awake and alive than we were at any time before. As we reach the end of this exploration, consider how far we've come from the notion that midlife is merely a crisis of diminishing returns. We began by challenging the accepted wisdom that our 40s and 50s must be marked by a spiraling sense of loss. Instead, we've uncovered a deeper understanding. Midlife energy is not simply about how much juice we have left, but about how intentionally we use it. Rather than letting society's scripts define our potential, we can harness the insights of Jungian psychology, especially the concepts of shadow integration, persona refinement, and individuation, to transform the very idea of a midlife crisis into a midlife awakening. What does this give us ultimately? Hope, direction, a reminder that the second half of life holds its own form of vitality, one that draws on wisdom, complexity, and the ability to see beneath life's surface. The garden metaphor remains instructive. After the exuberant growth of spring and early summer, the gardener turns to more subtle tasks, nurturing the soil, pruning dead branches, redirecting resources to the deepest roots. This is precisely how we can think of ourselves at midlife, not as a garden in decline, but as one entering its most purposeful and sustainable phase of growth. With every choice to integrate rather than fragment, to explore rather than suppress, we cultivate a well-tended inner landscape that enriches not just our own lives but the world around us. And perhaps that, as Jung would say, is how we outgrow our unsolvable problems, by evolving into larger, more cohesive versions of ourselves.